Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking probably going to be an hour and 15 minutes, we're going to guess. That's how long the first one lasted. But thank you so much for taking 75 minutes out of your Sunday evening. We really do appreciate that. We are going to pack in a ton of stuff in the next 75 minutes. I'm actually just I'm going to use the slides, the introductory slides, to sort of start us off so we can get right to the questions that you submitted. And what we found was really helpful during the first session was we were able to use some slides that we developed using the questions that you submitted. And we were able to answer a ton of questions that way. And then we were able to also answer some questions live from the group as well at different times. So we had over 2,000. I would actually say it's probably closer to 2,500 questions that were submitted over the last 48 hours. And there were three major themes. And we're going to break this evening up into these three topics. And we'll spend about 30 minutes for instruction, about 20 minutes for cleaning, masking, and distancing, and about 20 minutes for COVID testing and contact tracing. But those were the three themes that your questions really were identified with. And, our planning, these questions really help us, and your feedback really helps us. Our emergency response team has really been active since early March. So we use your feedback and your questions as sort of our agenda as we go through each weekly meeting. And as you can imagine, we receive guidance daily from either the governor's office, the New York State Department of Health, or the Monroe County Department of Health. I'm in contact with Dr. Mendoza on a weekly basis with the other superintendents. So with that said, I will try to answer as many questions tonight as I can. If I don't know an answer, I will toss it to one of the experts that's on this call. And if they don't know the answer, then we'll just tell you we don't know the answer yet. Just realize that the answers that I may give tonight may change depending on guidance that we get. So, but this is as up to date as we can possibly make it. Meeting guidelines. We are recording this session as well as the next four. We do expect nearly 1,200 parents to take part in our 6 informational sessions over the next 48 hours. And, but just in case people can't make it, we're going to record and just put this on our website, all 6 sessions. And I talked about bullet number 2. We took all your questions. We're going to try to answer as many. We can't get to 2,500 questions, but luckily many of your questions were the same. That's why we divided them up into the 3 different themes. When we open questions up to the Zoom session, you guys will ask you to use the raise hand feature of Zoom. Please stay on mute. That's really important because the background noise just makes it hard to hear for others. And then the last bullet is probably the most important bullet. All of us, I'm sure, are feeling anxious, fatigued, stressed, frustrated. And I think we all share these common feelings. We are trying our best. Whether it's parents trying their best, kids are trying their best as well. And certainly, speaking personally, I know I'm trying my best as well. So we know that you may not agree with everything you hear, whether it's from a neighbor or whether it's from me. But we just ask that you just realize that we're all here for the same reason. No one chose to be in a pandemic, and that kindness goes a long way. All right, here we go. Let's hop right in. So my name's Carmen, superintendent. Brian Neenan is also on this meeting. Brian is a deputy superintendent. We have our experts from operations. That's Mr. Blaine Cunningham, who is our manager and director of buildings and grounds and operations. Brian Freeman is our chief financial officer. And from instruction, we have Colleen Armstrong. She's our executive director for student services. So she'll be able to answer some questions about IEPs and services and testing. Not COVID testing, but testing to see if your child needs some services. Aaron Land is our director of elementary ed. From Human Resources, Dave Swinson is on this call. So in case any of you are really inspired to perhaps become a bus driver or something else that you want to be employed, Dave's your man. From Building Administration, Laura Ballou and Jen Sullivan are principals at the elementary level. Jim Baer is here from Spry Middle, and Paul Benz is here from Schrader High School. And then last but not least, our co-directors for instructional tech, who are responsible for all of our Chromebooks and anything technology and Google Classroom and Seesaw, all that good stuff, Brian Zimmer and Joe Montemero. Okay, so here are the three themes. We're gonna start with instructional models. We're probably gonna spend about 25 to 30 minutes on instructional models. So we took all of your questions and we're gonna try to answer them over the next 4 or 5 slides, okay? So we'll start with the 100% remote learning option. This is probably the most common question, which was, tell me more about the remote option, the 100% remote learning option. So there are a couple slides here, all right? So we'll start with this one. And so students they're gonna be bringing their devices, no matter how old they are, K-12, they're gonna be bringing their devices to and from school. And we're actually going to give everyone, I think Joe and Brian Zimmer, I think we're going to be able to give everyone an extra charger or a charger to be at home. So that hopefully will help. Daily attendance is definitely required. This is a huge change from our emergency learning in the spring. So when you are opting into this model, 100% remote, it's like you're attending school, but you're just attending school from your home. But there will be grades, there will be assignments, there will be mandatory attendance. So, and if you don't show up, either you're gonna have a note from your doctor or mom or dad, or you're skipping class, and we don't want that. So, but it's definitely required. I'm gonna skip bullet number 3, because I'm gonna ask Colleen Armstrong to talk about that in a moment. And when you opt into this model, you're opting in for 1 semester, which is from now through the end of January. And the reason is we need to make sure that we know how many students are remote so that we have an idea of how many kids are going to show up in a classroom and how do we staff that classroom? How do we staff that building so that we still maintain distancing? If we were to allow remote to sort of come back and forth, what happens is if there's an influx of students coming from remote back into the classroom, that may actually make it really hard to maintain our distancing. So that's why it's a semester-long commitment. Now, it is easier to go from hybrid in-person to remote. It may not happen instantaneously, but it is easier to do that because we don't have to worry about distancing when we are remote. Now, it might be tougher to go hybrid to remote depending on the services that your child has. So, meaning, speech services, OT, PT, consultant teacher, things like that. So, but again, it is a little bit easier to go from in-person to remote. It's almost impossible to go from remote to in-person during that first semester. All right, so my segue to IEP programs and services, I'm gonna sort of turn it over because this was many people had questions about, will my child receive the services on their IEP if they go 100% remote? Colleen, why don't you take it?
Thanks, Carmen. Absolutely, they will receive the services and programs that are outlined on their IEP. That I stands for individual, so it's going to look a little different for each student, and that's something that we would work out together as a team. What will be different from when we had our emergency learning in the spring is that, as you mentioned, we are expecting students to attend. And for example, if your child has speech twice a week, you will be getting that speech twice a week, and we'll expect your child to participate in that remote learning with their speech pathologist. Several other questions that have been asked about, can we still get testing or evaluations? And yes, we will move forward with that. Your building teams will work with you to complete those. But your programs and services will be provided. If you have questions, feel free to talk to your building team, or if not, call the Student Services Office. We're happy to answer any of your questions that are individual to your child.
Thanks, Colleen. So we're going to transition to the next slide, and we're going to focus on elementary. Okay, we'll also talk about secondary in a moment. So 100% remote for elementary. What is this going to look like? So if you opt into this model, your child will be assigned either an AM team, or an AM teacher, I should say, or a PM. And they are going to have their own teacher during that AM block and during the PM block. Now, what happens during those blocks? The block is approximately 2 hours, just like in person, and it will include an ELA portion, a math, and a social emotional learning. Like they're making their connections, they're sort of getting to know each other, morning meeting, and so those are the 3 academic blocks. Okay, social emotional is definitely academic. Now, what happens after, let's say your child's in the morning and they Google Meet with their teacher, okay? And it's going to be a Webster teacher. It may not be a Webster teacher that you know. It may not be from your own home building, but it'll be a Webster teacher. So what happens after those 2 hours? Well, the second part of the day, it'll be a blend of mostly asynchronous learning. It's like on-demand learning, whether it's social studies or reading or typing. There might be an assignment from the teacher, and there's math that they can do, RAS Kids for reading. Now, art and music will be provided. There might be opportunities for live sessions for art and music, but many times it may be asynchronous. So it's like, all right, here's an art lesson, here's a music lesson given by Webster teachers, but it may not occur live. Okay, so every day a student is going to have a blend. There will be a live blend for 2 hours, and then there's an asynchronous blend, working on some other pieces during that afternoon session, or maybe it's even the morning session. It all depends, right? So, and then again, it gives them an opportunity for lunch. It gives them an opportunity for breaks. We knew that a full school day under the remote option, whether they're in kindergarten or whether they're in 12th grade, we knew that there's no way that a child can really go 6 hours, 6.5 hours straight with Google Meet. We're not using Zoom for our kids, and the reason is that Chromebooks do not do well with Zoom. And the reason I'm using Zoom tonight, though, is because I don't have a Chromebook. I have a laptop, and I can also see a whole bunch of you at once. So anyway, so that's the elementary remote option. If we transition to secondary, now this is going to look different than what we just talked about for elementary. Every single secondary student from 6th grade through 12th grade, all of them receive a schedule 8 periods long. It's a very traditional, old school 8-period schedule, just like the ones that most of us on this call, on this meeting, probably went through. Most of us probably had an 8-period schedule when we were in high school, and we saw every teacher every day. That's what our students are going to do. Okay? 6-12. Each period, right, is 40 to 44 minutes, okay, long. And the way this will work is on odd calendar days, the student will meet with their odd period teachers live, full period, 40 minutes. Okay, so on October 13th, an odd day, 13 is an odd number, I'm going to go meet with my 1, 3, 5, 7 teachers. Now, my 2, 4, 6, 8 teachers, I can pop in for extra help. I can pop in, maybe the teacher is actually saying, no, listen, I need you in here today. I know it's an odd day, but I need you in here perhaps for a lab or an extended lab or something like that. I used to teach AP Biology. I could absolutely see myself telling my students, listen, I need you here on these days to finish this lab. But in any case, on odd days, they're in the odd periods. live, mandatory. On even days, they're in 2468. Live with the teacher. Most likely, they're all going to be Webster teachers. There might be not an opportunity. There might be a requirement for us to perhaps use somebody from the region, like the BOCES region, to do an oddball course. But for the most part, I do expect almost all of our courses will be taught by Webster teachers. So again, teachers are available during those opposite blocks. And every day, our students will have at least 4 live classes and then 4 check-ins if they need to. And there will be their independent work while they're not Zooming live or Google Meeting live. And then they also have lunches and they have breaks because they're following their own schedule. So everyone has a lunch for the most part, and many of them have at least one study hall. So why did we do it this way? It's again to try to prevent Zoom fatigue or screen fatigue. But that's the way that our secondary remote will work. Okay, is that the last slide, Aaron? Okay, so sorry. So that's remote. We just covered remote. Now, a number of your questions also had to do with the hybrid learning. Okay, so this is the in-person learning, kids coming in, well, at least half the kids at a time coming in. And let's start with elementary. So elementary, half the kids are coming in to AM, the other half are coming in to PM for approximately 2 hours a day. Now, I know one of the very first questions that you probably had was, wait a minute, this isn't a half day. Okay? A half day isn't 2 hours. I agree, it's not. Typically, our half days are 2.5 hours. And that's the way they've always been, to tell you the truth. It's always been 2.5 hours. The reason why it's looking like it's 2 hours right now, well, number one, because it is 2 hours, but the other piece is we are extending the arrival piece and the dismissal piece for our kids, because we expect, according to the survey that you guys have been filling out, 44% of our parents are going to drive their kids to and from school. So we know we're going to have an extended period at the beginning, an extended period at the end to make sure that all the cars can get through the loop. But I have a feeling that once we get that process more efficient, arrival and dismissal, we'll be able to add maybe 15 to 20 minutes to that 2 hours. But again, we'd rather just tell you, listen, expect 2 and be pleasantly surprised for 220. But it's because many of you are driving your kids, which is fantastic because it lowers numbers on buses, which allows the buses to maintain social distancing. So 2 hours, what are we going to do? During that 2 hour in-person time, ELA, math, social emotional learning, morning meeting. It's the same type of blocks that we had during the remote. When they go home, whether it's home for the afternoon or whether they're home in the morning, they'll have the same types of activities that you saw with remote. The one bigger difference here is that art and music are virtual this year. Art and music, kids won't be leaving their in-person class to go to art and music. So many times they'll have synchronous live art and music classes during their off time, right? So, and these will be recorded. So in case you can't make it, at least you can use it on demand. PE will occur. It'll occur probably once a week for 25 minutes. And it may occur in the classroom or it may occur outside, depending on the weather. And it might be, again, tied to recess as well. So, but we do expect to have some PE for virtual students as well, just to let you know, but certainly for the in-person. So every day, again, our elementary students will have 2 hours of in-person time, and then they'll have some independent time, and they'll have lunch and breaks as well. And we will be able to feed our kids who need it. They'll be able to have grab and go. We'll have those meals ready for our kids, whether it's breakfast or lunch. So that's in-person elementary. Let's hit the last slide, which I think is, oh no, not quite. We have 2 more slides. All right, so let's talk about secondary, the in-person. So students 6-12 are going to attend twice a week in person, either Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. All right. So why those? Why use those days and why not use Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday? The reason is we wanted to make sure that kids didn't go 5 full days without engaging with their teacher face to face. So hence Monday, Thursday, and Tuesday, Friday. And they never really go more than 48 hours, I think, without seeing their teacher, because on Wednesdays, they see their teacher. It's all remote. But they see all their teachers on Wednesdays. Wednesday is the remote day, but they see all their teachers for mini classes of 25 minutes. So I'm a high school student. I'm going to school Monday, Thursday. I'm seeing all my teachers, all 8, whatever. I'm following my 8-period schedule. On Wednesdays, I see them again. I see all my teachers, and it's for mini classes of 25 minutes. So what happens on the 2 days that they're independent, that they're not Zooming in and they're not in person? Well, those 2 days are for independent work, working on their assignments. There may be some on-demand videos, on-demand writing assignments, on-demand reading, on-demand assignments, I guess, that they'll be working on, right? So, so if somebody says, oh, they're not in school, they're not learning anything on those 2 days, I would push back a little bit and say, well, no, they are. They're on their own, but there's structure to that, and there's assignments. And then again, they don't go more than really 24 to 48 hours without, again, touching base with their teacher. What does the schedule actually look like? That's the last slide for our instructional theme. And then we're going to open it up to you guys for questions. So on the left-hand side, you see the high school, middle school schedule. Okay, starts at 8:45, ends at 3:15. The classes are 40 minutes long, okay, with a 5-minute passing. Or no, actually 4-minute passing. Well, 4 minutes at middle school, 5 minutes at high school. So, so that's their in-person schedule, all 8 periods. And then on Wednesdays, they start at 11, end at 2:55, and those are for their 25-minute classes. Now remember, on Wednesdays, there is going to be a lunch break because, again, most of our kids are scheduled a lunch. Okay, so now here's what you guys need to do. We're probably going to have time for about maybe 6, 7 questions, maybe 8. So you're going to raise your hand, and Miss Land will call on somebody, and then you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Kim
Ready?
Tracy.
Go. Hi, Mr. Racy.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
My question is, my daughter has an IEP and most of her services are like 8.5 hours. So like in a 10-hour week, how could we possibly do this where she's actually learning new things?
Yeah, so for those students who are coming following the hybrid schedule, who have an IEP, their services will likely be a combination of some of that in person and some of it would be in a remote learning. But we would still be following the schedule of whatever it is that's on their IEP, as I mentioned before.
Okay, another question I have, I guess, is we were going to switch her school from playing South to Schlegel this year so that she would be in ICT class. But now I'm questioning what difference is that going to make with only the 2 hours a day?
Yeah, Kim, maybe it would be helpful if I give you a call and we can talk that through.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks,
Okay.
Kim. Thank you.
Tara Yarovitz.
Hi. I had a question about how some of the performing arts specials would occur, like a select chorus, instrumentals, things like that.
Tara, I don't have an answer for you. We are
hybrid.
Yeah, we're still working on that. We know that, a full chorus is not going to happen. And so I know that, Brenda, Mrs. Nitch, because I think, is Hannah going to Thomas or Schrader? I can't remember.
She's not there yet. She's at Willing still. One more year.
Oh, she's at Willing. Okay, okay. So in any case, they're still trying to work on, how to hold chorus and band, especially. Orchestra is a little bit easier because it's just strings, so you can space the kids out about 6 or 7 feet. So no answer yet, but I know it's going to occur. I mean, we're going to do something with band and something with singing. It's going to look a lot different this year. But they're going to do something. I have a feeling it's going to be a combination of in-person and certainly remote, especially for the whole group singing piece, because you can't have a whole group singing. It's impossible.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Tara.
Nikki Agnello.
Hi, Nikki. Oh, she's trying, I can tell. All right, so let's go to another one, and if Nikki just unmute yourself and you can interrupt somebody, and then we'll come right back to you, okay?
Nikki Johnson.
Nikki.
Hello.
Hi.
So my son is in State Road. When he comes home, what are the instructions for when he comes home? Are there schedule for him? He has art, he has gym at home. What's going on? What's going to happen the rest of the time because we are having daycare issues. So are things going to have to be turned in? Is it going to be live? Does he have a by 5 o'clock test to get done?
No.
State Road?
So, yeah.
What's going to be the criteria?
Yeah. So Nikki, don't worry about that. I mean, the whole idea of having deadlines the day of, during the downtime, and I hate to even call it downtime, but during the downtime, there will be an incredible amount of flexibility there. So don't worry about that part.
Okay.
There may be some live stuff that goes on with art and music. Okay, maybe. But again, we all understand that daycare is probably the number one obstacle, and that there will be students that they're just not going to be able to access those live art and music classes while they're at daycare, while they're at grandma's house, because grandma doesn't have Wi-Fi or doesn't know how to use Wi-Fi, whatever, okay? And but he'll still be able, or your kids will still be able at some point to, maybe when they're home with you, you can say, oh, you know what, we need to go and see Mrs. Jones's music lesson from today, or, Mr. Graff's, no, actually PE is going to happen live, but Mrs. Stevens' art lesson. So you'll be okay. You'll be okay. You're not going to miss any. You're not going to have this really tight schedule that there's a deadline to. Okay. And if something is missed, you're going to be just fine. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Great question. Two
Joy.
more. Land.
Sure. Joy is up next. Unless
Hi, Joy.
Nikki, I don't know if Nikki
Hi.
got her sound working, but her hand is down. So we can come back to her if she got it working.
Okay. Hi, Joy.
Hi. My son is supposed to be in the EMCC welding program.
Yes.
So he's going into junior year. And
Yep.
I know I did get a separate letter from EMCC that, they were waiting on the governor and things like that. But have you heard anything? What's going on with that?
Yeah. So Joy, I just heard something. Well, actually, Mr. Neenan and I just heard something about an hour ago. So great question. And it looks as though EMCC is going to follow our schedule, meaning they'll be live for 2 days a week for your son for welding. And then Wednesdays will be their remote day. Because that's what most of the other districts are doing as well. Wednesday is every district is having a Wednesday as the remote day at the high school.
Okay.
So your son will be able to attend Monday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Friday. So you'd be all set.
Now, about transportation, will there be transportation? Do I need to?
Nope.
Because I did say I can transport him, but I didn't know
Yep.
if it's a smaller group or what.
Yeah. So no, there will be transportation. They're going to actually weld the bus together. That's actually their first project. They weld the bus together. So no, but you're all set, Joy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Last one.
Sure. NL Job.
Hi. One of the questions that we had is what happens in between classes? Are they going to be staying in that same class with that 4 minutes of downtime, or are they going to be moving from class to class as traditionally would happen?
Traditionally, what happens? They're going to be moving. They're going to be moving. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that whole moving piece in the hallway, and about cleaning as well during the next theme, or actually during the last theme, I think it is. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. I had a canvas.
Will do.
Okay.
Karen, can you hear me now?
Sort of, Nikki.
Quick question. The letters that got sent out with their placements for AM, PM, will that stand for remote and hybrid?
So it'll stand for hybrid. The remote we're going to have to redo. So because we're still trying to figure out who's going to be in remote, and once we do, Nikki, then we'll resort the remote kids into AM and PM. And if there's an issue, you'll contact us, and we'll try to help out any family. Okay.
All right, thank you, Carm.
You're welcome, Nick. Okay, let's go to the second theme. The second theme is testing, screening, and contact tracing. And there are 2 slides for this one. So the number one question of the 2,500 questions that were submitted over the last 48 hours, number one question was, what happens if there's a positive COVID test? Right? Which is the next slide. So that's my teaser. We're coming up on the next one for that. Okay. All right. So first of all, let's start with this slide, these 3 bullets. Health screens. All students are going to be screened at home. Okay. We'll have an app. Okay. This app will not only do your daily screening, but it will help us when you're on campus in terms of like getting ready to pick up your child. It'll actually notify us that you're on campus. So then we can release your child right to you. It's actually going to help us a lot with dismissal. So health screens completed at home, including temperature, when you take temperature. So the vast majority of parents hopefully will do this. There will be some, like myself, who would probably forget occasionally. And when that happens, we will be notified from the app. Carm Gamina's daughter, Gracie, has not been screened. So we will be able to, when that student gets to the building, we'll be able to take their temperature. But I don't want anyone to think that we're taking temperatures of all of our kids every day. There's just no way that could happen. We have 8,400 kids, or probably 8,000 that actually show up, or actually 4,000 because it's only half at a time. But it would eat up way too much instructional time. So I think many of us are probably doing this already on an app in order to come to work. So this is just an extension to our kids. Now, is testing mandatory? And will schools do any testing? Right now, testing for COVID is not mandatory. They don't want us doing testing, routine testing. That is direct from CDC and direct from the Department of Health. Okay? Their rationale is they want to test people who truly need a test. They've been exposed, they've come from another state, they've come from a hot spot area, they're getting ready for surgery, and we just don't have enough reagents across the country, but certainly in our area. So testing is not mandatory, and even if it were to be mandatory, which I don't think it will be, we will not be doing any testing at school, at least not right now. And I don't see that happening. Okay? So what happens if someone gets sick at school? Let's just talk about just getting sick in general, because the vast majority of illnesses that we see in a school are not going to be COVID. Okay, they're going to be allergies. They're going to be we all get sick at the end of September because we've all been together now for 3 weeks. But it's probably not COVID. It's other things, right? But what happens if a student isn't feeling well? Okay, they have a headache. They have a cough. Whatever. They have a tummy ache. So a few things are going to happen. First, the nurse actually will talk to the classroom teacher or the classroom aide and sort of do a triage over the phone. What are the symptoms and so on? Okay, send the child down. They'll go down to an isolation room. It is supervised, they're not all by themselves. And at that point, depending on how things are looking, the parents are notified. Most likely, parents would come, pick up their child, bring that child home. And this is where the partnership between parents, pediatrician, and school district sort of come to play. The parent is going to call the pediatrician, and the pediatrician may or may not see you. Okay? They may say, listen, we'll do telemedicine, or just give us the symptoms over the phone and we'll let you know. But let's just say cough, fever, and shortness of breath, or whatever it's going to be. Kids don't tend to show shortness of breath, but whatever. But they have some symptoms. And let's say the pediatrician says, you know what, I want you to get tested. I want you to get COVID tested. But that is really up to the pediatrician. Okay? I can't mandate a test, right? But the pediatrician can't mandate you guys to do anything either, but hopefully people will feel comfortable enough to do what the pediatrician says, because it does affect the timeline for the return to school. So think about that for a second. We're going to then segue to, we get tested, and now it's a positive COVID test, which is the next slide. There we go. So what happens when there is a positive test, student or adult? Okay. The Department of Health is the absolute lead agency. We take our direction from them. They will, if there's a positive test, I will get notified, or the district is notified almost immediately. So if that test comes back, we get notified probably within an hour. And then they will ask us to help them, like with contact tracing, in the sense of, can you please tell us the other kids in the classroom? Can you please tell us the other adults in the classroom? Because then they will contact those people. We don't do the contacting, okay, for the contact tracing. Most likely, depending on the level of exposure, that student would be quarantined for 14 days. Most likely the parents would be quarantined for 14 days. And most likely the classroom, let's say it's an elementary and they're all potted together for 2 hours, most likely those 8 to 12 kids are also going to be quarantined. Now, Dr. Mendoza is very clear. It's all based on exposure. And that's really the questions that they first ask you when they're contact tracing is, hey, what type of exposure did you have? Were you exposed for, and the biggest thing for exposure is more than 10 minutes, closer than 6 feet with no mask on. That is their big piece for exposure. So if a student, let's say a student came in to a classroom right from the bus, and they weren't in the classroom for more than 2 or 3 minutes, and they were like, I don't feel so well. And then they went down to the nurse. So those kids in that classroom most likely were not exposed, at least according to their definition. And again, I'm following the lead from DOH. And so that's why there is a possibility that not everybody around that child will be quarantined. It all depends on the exposure. And that's why the distancing is so important and the masking is so important. Because Dr. Mendoza is very clear when he says, listen, if someone is if someone is COVID positive, but you were wearing a mask and you were 6 feet away, you should be okay. You may still be quarantined, okay? But at least you probably won't come down with it because you were taking the precautions. So we work with the DOH to determine who is notified. We have to make sure that we maintain privacy. We most likely can't share names, even though I'm sure it'll get out there. So when you have these positive cases, many people asked, well, what shuts us down again? Okay, what shuts us down from in-person learning to all remote for everybody? Well, there are two scenarios. One is if we go above 9% for a positivity rate in our region, so then the entire region is shut down. It's very clear from Governor Cuomo's and the New York State Department of Health guidelines. So that's the first one. The second scenario is I may have to say, you know what, we can't continue with in-person learning because we don't have bus drivers or we don't have teachers because they're absent. And they might be absent because they're in quarantine for family members that may not even be part of our district, or that they're feeling ill. They know it's not COVID, but they don't want to come to school until they're totally well. So, for example, I always get sick at the end of September. Always. I've been an educator for 32 years. Every October 1st, which is my anniversary, I'm always sick. My wife thinks I'm faking it, but I'm really not. But it's because I've been in school for 4 weeks and I get my first cold. I always come to work, but I probably won't this year. So I'll be home. So what if that happens over and over and over again with teachers and bus drivers? We'd probably have to go to remote. It may not last long, but we probably have to go to remote. So the last question that many of you asked was, how can we get back to normal? How can we get back to 100% in-person learning, Monday through Friday, all of our kids? So you're not going to like this answer, but the only way that we get back is if the 6-foot distance requirement is relaxed or eliminated. Just no way to get everyone back in our buildings with the 6-foot requirement. And that 6-foot requirement is not going away until our infection rate goes down to almost zero, like we're New Zealand, which probably won't happen, or we get a vaccine, and most of us are vaccinated. So the timeline for the vaccine is by Christmas, and then it's going to take a good year, well, at least 6 months to get most of us vaccinated. So this is where, I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver to you, I guess, but I do not, when we start in the hybrid model, I do not see us going back to 100% in person this school year. I don't see it happening because I don't see the 6-foot requirement going away. Now I could be wrong, and I hope I am. I hope we get the vaccine at Thanksgiving and they have this amazing distribution so we all get it by February 1st. I don't think that's really probable, but you never know. So I think that's the last slide. So I'm going to open it up to questions, and we can have some questions for a good 10 minutes.
Carlos is up first.
Hi, Karen.
Thank you
for the information. Regarding contact tracing, how is that going to be done? And the question is regarding, although it's kind of silly, with all the robocalls that we get on a daily basis, how do we know it's a real call that we should be picking up and not ignoring?
Yeah, so you'll get a call, and it won't be a blocked caller. I think it'll say Department of Health. And that's a great, you know what? And so I'm going to need to make sure that we message that really well. When I send home my weekly updates, I should probably be saying, listen, if you get a phone call and it says DOH or Monroe County, you should definitely answer it.
And then along the lines of the app that we're going to be using, will the app also be a path for communication for that, or will that be completely different?
It will be completely different. We're not. Okay. I don't think we're going to be able to push notifications through this app.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carlos. Next.
Kelly Liberatore.
Kelly.
Hi. I had one question from the last section too. I was told that we possibly might be able to, for our littles that have SPED services, if they do not have them scheduled during their in-person time, that we would be able to transport them during the time they might have it, so they don't have to have it via Zoom or whatever we're using.
That is a possibility. Colleen, go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, I was going to say it is a possibility. It's really just going to be a scheduling piece and looking at who we can fit in where. As soon as our survey closes on Wednesday, who's remote and who's hybrid, our teams are ready to start looking at that for it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Cal.
And then also for kids that test positive what happens when they have other siblings in other buildings?
So Kelly, so now they'll go, the contact tracers will ask you, well, you know, your daughter's in 4th grade. I have no idea. I'm just sort of making this up. I saw somebody.
You're right. One of them.
Okay, there you go. So have they been in close contact in the last 24 to 48 hours with their siblings? Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the other siblings are out of the house. But the probability, Kelly, is most likely everyone in your household is going to be quarantined.
Right.
Because you're not wearing masks. You're not wearing masks in your house, and you're not maintaining a 6-foot distance, and you're all together all the time, when they're not in school.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next person is Elan Govin.
Okay.
Yes, hey, this is Ilango. So, question one, I'm thinking that they will be wearing face masks when they go to school, the hybrid kids. And two, this schedule that we are talking right now is only good until January or the first semester. In other words, do we have to go back and reselect whether we want a hybrid or 100% remote for the second semester?
Great question. Yes, about masking, which we're going to get into in our last theme. And we will be putting out another survey probably around the holidays to give us about 5 or 6 weeks to sort of plan. So right around Christmas time, our present to you will be another survey to fill out in terms of where do you want to go? Do you want to do you want to switch from remote to hybrid, from hybrid to remote? But you'll be getting another opportunity to opt in or opt out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next.
Next question is from Amy Seavor.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Mr. G, my question is, you're talking about the 6-foot spacing. How are you guys going to do that in lunches? A middle school child going to lunch, how are they going to stay 6 feet apart when they have to take their mask off to eat?
So they will be 6 feet apart. Luckily, we have 2 things working for us. One, there's only half the kids in the building at once, if that. Actually, I'm going to guess it's going to be more like 40% of the kids are in. 2, the middle school schedule now has 8 lunch periods. So lots of different lunch periods, which means even smaller groups of kids. And the cafeterias are so large that the kids can be eating 6 feet apart. But they'll be in their seat 6 feet apart. Now, the other question is, how will a middle schooler stay, and it's only for 22 minutes. I think that's 22 or 23 for lunch, but will they actually stay in their seat for 22 or 23 minutes without getting up and seeing their friend? We all know middle school kids, the chance of that is probably pretty minimal, but that's why we have adults in there to say, listen, you got to be 6 feet apart, and if you're not eating, put your mask on. But they will, we got the distancing part. That's not the hard part. The hard part is telling us 7th grade boy to stay away from his friends.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question is from Martin and Sherry.
Okay, we got one more after this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Albert, what happens if the doctor wants to see the student?
Can't hear you, sorry.
You can't hear me?
Can you just speak up or maybe get closer to your mic?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, great, thank you.
So the question is, you covered what happens if the doctor wants to see them and do a COVID test. If the doctor says that it's probably just a normal cold, is it just business as usual, or do you want them to stay home until they're 100% better?
Yeah. Aaron, did you hear that? Because I didn't hear the last part.
I think it's about when kids can come back to school if they're sick.
Yeah, it's when you
okay.
COVID.
Sorry, I still can't hear you. So if it's around coming back to school, there is a definite protocol that that the DOH as well as area pediatricians are working on. That will basically, many times it's going to be, you need a note from your primary care, and you need to, be symptom-free, fever-free, and if you've tested positive, you need to have at least 1, possibly 2 negative tests in order to come back. So I'm sorry, Martin, if I'm not answering your question, but I can't hear you. So we'll go to the last question.
The screen name is Laura iPad.
Laura iPad, how are you?
Hi. My question is, if my child gets
Laura
COVID.
Blair.
Yes.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Good, go ahead.
If my child is diagnosed or has to quarantine and they're part of the hybrid model, now they're out of school for 2 weeks and their siblings out of school for 2 weeks, how does the learning occur at that point? Is there a camera in their classroom, or are they switching to a remote class, or how does that work?
Great question. Aaron, do you want to, or Brian, do you guys, because this is, no matter what level you're at, this is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with.
Want me to start? I'll start.
Yep, go
ahead, Brian.
And I think it'll be similar for both levels, but Aaron, I'll let you jump in too. So the remote team is going to be seen, and it's going to be feeling like it's a separate school. So we won't be able to move that situation, Laura, your individual situation there, onto the remote team. We wouldn't want to do that for your son or daughter. You can kind of think about it like if you had gotten sick even like last school year before we had COVID or any other years, you got to make sure you're going to work with that teacher to try and make up the work and whatnot. So it's going to be a plan, an individual plan for individual situations with your son or daughter and their teachers, plural, to make up those the missed work and try to keep up with work if they're able to. In some situations, they might be too sick and they won't be able to do the work, so it'll have to be that they make up when they get back. Okay? Aaron, you want to jump in and add anything?
That's good. The only other thing I would say for elementary is that we are going to have that half of the day that's asynchronous, and so they're going to have access to that at all times, regardless.
Yeah.
Great question.
Well, same thing will be true at secondary as well. If they're hybrid, they'll have those 2 days that are asynchronous, and they'll have the ability for that. You know, one thing I'm going to bring up that was a common question too is the platform. 3rd through 12th grade will be using Google Classroom, so it will be a lot easier this year. I know that was something that we heard in the springtime when we had some teachers using one platform and other teachers using another. We have a common platform for 312, and that is Google Classroom. That's our learning management system. And for kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, and UPK students, they'll be using Seesaw as their common platform. And that goes along with their iPads much easier, and it's a little bit more appropriate, age appropriate for those kids. So, but I'll turn things back over to Carm to keep it moving.
And Laura, your kids never get sick, so you'll be fine. All right, last theme for the night. The last theme is cleaning, distancing, masking. We're going to break this up into bus, elementary classroom, secondary classroom. Let's start off with the bus. So we have, the bus is probably going to have no more than, it's definitely going to be below 50% capacity. Because if we think about it, we're only transporting at most 50% of our kids, because half the kids are coming one day or in the morning and the other half are coming in the afternoon or a couple of days. But then 44% of our families are saying that they don't need transportation. So we're looking at buses really are going to be quarter filled, all right? So most likely between 15 and 20 kids on a bus, 1 child per seat, except for siblings from the same family. The high contact areas will be wiped down in between bus runs. The intense cleaning happens at the end of the day. Kids can bring on their own hand sanitizer. You can bring hand sanitizer from home. We have our own hand sanitizer that we get from the state. That's not allowed on the bus for a variety of reasons. Some people have asked, well, can we put plexiglass up on the bus? Plexiglass is flammable, so it's not allowed on the bus or in our buildings. And we also can't use anything that will obstruct the driver. But I'm not worried about busing, to tell you the truth, because so many families are saying that they're going to be able to drive. And our buses typically can fit 66, I think, or 63. So we'll be able to maintain distancing. And so that's a good thing. And masking on the bus, definitely. They're going to be masked. Okay. So that's the bus. Now, elementary classroom. We're going to have about 8 to 13 kids per class. 13 might be a little bit high, but let's just say it's 8 to 13. Remember, elementary, they're only there for 2 hours. The mask will most likely be on the entire time. I've yet to meet a teacher that has said that they're going to allow their kids to take mask breaks for an extended period of time. Now, I can see if they're outside and they are so spread apart, okay, maybe, but it's 2 hours. Kids, that they can definitely do it for 2 hours. And the reason I know this is because this summer we had a summer camp with special needs children down at Miracle Field, and they were able to do it for, I think it was like 4 hours. So we know that 2 hours is doable. But if a teacher, if they know that, hey, you know what, I've only got 5 kids in this particular room, they're all spread out, they're sitting quietly reading a book or whatever it is, then they may say to the kids, you can take a mask break for a few minutes. The high contact areas within the building and within the high contact areas in the classroom will be cleaned in between the AM and PM. Okay? And we're going to do this like with all hands on deck. So every single person is going to get trained, including myself, Mr. Neenan, Ms. Land. We're going to be cleaning as well. So I'm going to choose an elementary building, and I'm going to go in, and every day for an hour, I'm going to be cleaning a classroom or two. The cleaner itself is hydrogen peroxide based. I'm going to turn it over in a moment to Mr. Cunningham, who will give you why we're using this particular cleaner. But we'll also make sure that the entire building is cleaned, obviously, after all the kids leave. So we'll hit the high contact areas multiple times throughout the day, and then a more intense cleaning at the end of the day. And Blaine, can you chime in on the hydrogen peroxide cleaning solution?
Certainly, thanks, Carm. Yeah, the good news through this is for several years now, we've been using the same disinfectant product that we're going to be using to keep our buildings open. As Carm said, this is a hydrogen peroxide based disinfectant, and it has a 1-minute kill claim against the COVID bacteria. So that's the good news about that. And it also has a 000 HMIS rating, which the first 0 there is for basically health and safety. So the use for the person using it, it's one of the safest on the market.
Great, thank you. Let's go to let's go to middle and high school. Again, 8 to 13 kids per class. Masks are on at the discretion of the teacher, but I've yet to meet a teacher that they're all pro-mask. They're all pro-science. They understand what we're dealing with here. But there are classes that do go outside. And there may very well be 4, 5, 6 kids that are working, they're doing a field project, whatever it is. So at the teacher discretion, there might be a time where the kids will be able to take a break. High contact areas, cleaned repeatedly through the day. I'll get to the lockers in a second. The desktops can be wiped down in between periods. And again, every staff member trained, same hydrogen peroxide solution will be used. And then a deeper cleaning at the end of the day by the custodial staff. In terms of lockers, kids can still use their lockers, but it's not going to be the same type of use or same frequency of use as in years past. So at the high school, the majority of high school students don't use their lockers. That's just been the case even pre-pandemic. But at middle school, they do tend to use their lockers. In the old days, probably after every period. But this year, we're going to be asking our students to only go to their lockers at the beginning of the day, at lunchtime or before lunchtime, and at the end of the day. So instead of hitting their locker 6 or 7 times, they're only going to get there 3 times. And in terms of the hallways, it's really easy to pod kids at the elementary level. They're there for 2 hours, and they're just used to having just one class, one teacher. Much harder to do at middle and high school. High school, it's impractical to do it that way. So they will be changing classes. And in the hallway, we're looking for signage to say, listen, you guys got to walk, you got to be on the right-hand side and you got to be distanced. And now, do I expect high school and middle school kids to always be 6 feet apart while they're in the hallway? Nope, I don't. It's not the way, that's not human behavior. It's just not, especially with teenagers or preteens. But that's why the masks are so important. So remember what exposure is. Exposure is more than 10 minutes, less than 6 feet apart, no mask. So what we're going to do is they're not going to be in the hallway for very long, but they got that mask on. They, even if they're not 6 feet apart, at least, you know, they're not going to be together in a close conversation for a very long period of time. And there are going to be adults in the hallway to sort of scoot them along and to remind them to try to keep, you know, to keep their distance and such. But I'm a pretty practical guy and a realist. I just know that it's tough to keep whatever. I don't care how old they are in middle school or high school. It will be tougher to do while they're in the hallway. So we know that's going to be something that we're going to have to work on. Last slide, I think, right, Ms. Land? Yeah, okay. So one of the last questions that we got that was very frequent was around ventilation. And because we know that the worst thing we could do is be in a close conversation, close contact with no ventilation. So that's why, number one, we're doing hybrid so that we don't have a lot of kids in a room and we can keep them 6 feet apart. Number two, we have an amazing HVAC system. And our system, because it's a school system, it's not around comfort. And most people will tell you it's not around comfort, okay? If you're in a mall or a commercial property, their HVAC is really, it's built for comfort. We're not built for that. We are built for airflow. We want to get fresh air from the outside and exchange it for the air inside as often as possible per hour. And we have a 4 to 12 time refresh rate, 4 to 12 times per hour. So that's, you know, from every, let's say it's an average of 8 minutes. Every 8 minutes, there's a complete recycling of the air in a space. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So that really does help us. And I'm going to have Blaine sort of nerd out a little bit about ventilation because it's pretty cool what we have. Go ahead, Blaine.
So thanks, Carm. Yeah, you may recall Governor Cuomo mandating for malls a thing called MERV 15 filter. The MERV 15 rating was basically just a thicker media which allows air to go through. As a district, years ago through our Tools for Schools program, we went with a brand name called Penfield Television, and they have a MERV 8 rating. What that MERV 8 rating does is it allows that air to continuously go through and not going through that thick media. So that allows us to get more air exchanges. And remember that air coming in, a good portion of that is fresh air, and then the air is also exhausted out through our buildings. We also have an energy management program. With that, if one of our units fails in performance, it sends out of alarms. So we're able to monitor that via desktop, via laptop and smartphone. So in terms of to make sure that dampers are working, and think of a damper like a window because that's what lets the air into the units. It allows us to monitor all that to make sure that we're doing everything we can do in terms of keeping those rooms exchanging air.
Excellent. Thank you, Blaine. Okay, so that's the last slide that we have. Those are the three themes: instructional models, testing, cleaning, and masking. Okay, so we're going to open it up, and it's 7:06. We can probably get maybe 6 or 7 questions. So go ahead, Ms. Land.
Lisa Prudy.
Lisa.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So I just have a clarifying question. Our kids, we were originally going to be able to drive our kids, and we've been recalled to work. So we're no longer going to be able to drive our kids. Well, they'll be on the bus.
Okay.
2 of the 3. One walks to Spry. The 2 that are on the bus will be on the bus for 25 minutes. They both have kind of long rides. If they're on the bus with a kid that is testing positive, then are we going to be notified that there was a positive from the bus route?
Lisa, that's a great question. I don't have the answer for you because we would follow our lead from the Department of Health. My gut would tell me that you would not be notified because your child or children would be more than 6 feet away and masked. So I think they would say, you know what, they're not really, they haven't been exposed. So at least that's the sense that I get from Dr. Mendoza, because he has he has drilled into the superintendent's brains what exposure means. It doesn't mean being in the same building as somebody who has COVID, but it just means being closer than 6 feet without a mask for more than 10 minutes. So, and I understand the more than 10 minutes, I get that, but
right.
The other 2 pieces, they wouldn't be there. Now, again, that's my gut. That's what my gut's telling me. But again, I don't have the definitive answer for you.
Okay. And I have another question in terms of the secondary schools. Because the kids are going to be changing classrooms really often, they're going to be in the same airspace as the kids that were in the same room before them for 45 minutes. And I know that we have this air exchange rate, but you know, when we think about things like colds and the flu, like school is always kind of a breeding ground for kids are always bringing home, and teachers, everybody is just bringing all kinds of crud home from school. So why are we not being notified if there's a positive in the building and only in the class that our kids have been in?
Again, Lisa, I think it goes to exposure. And a child coming into a classroom 45 minutes later or 10 minutes later, after the positive case may have already left, I don't think that's going to be exposure. And I think at that point, the contact tracers will say, no, you need to contact these people. So again, we take our lead from DOH. And if DOH says, no, these are the people that need to be notified, and they're notifying them. And now as a district, you may say, listen, we've had a positive case. It was at Schrader. Everyone who's been exposed has already been notified. We'll probably be doing that, like a general notification, but we won't be able to really share names. And it's really the DOH that would say, you know what, you don't need to call Lisa because their child really wasn't exposed.
Okay, thank you.
That's the way I understand it. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Land.
Next is Jeffrey Kiles.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello. Hi, it's actually his wife, Christine, here too. I have 2 questions.
Christine.
Hi. My first question is, are we following the same bag requirements for school this year? I know typically they have a little sling bag, but if they're going to their locker less times, are they going to be allowed to carry a larger bag, or are we staying with the typical just sling bag in between classes?
Wow, it's a great question. Mr. Bear, any feedback? Mr. Bear is the principal of Spry.
Yeah, I could speak to that. Thanks, Carm. I know for both buildings, I know Willink last year was requirement of just sling bags, and Spry was looking at just sling bags this year. That requirement's going to be lifted, so students we allow students for larger bags to keep them from going to their lockers and accessing their lockers throughout the day and needing to access their lockers throughout the day. So yes, that's going to be raised.
Oh,
great.
Sorry, and then I just have one other quick question.
Sure.
So when they come home with stuff from school, say folders and bags, are we as parents going to get an instruction sheet to make sure? Obviously, we probably should wipe down their folders and lace all their bags, or do we not need to be concerned with that?
No, I from the guidance, the latest guidance that's out there, I don't think you really need to be concerned with that. They've sort of gotten away from that, like wiping down groceries and such. But I see Dr. Mendoza tomorrow. I'll ask him about that. But for right now, I don't think that's not something you really need to worry about. So here's the great thing. Well, not the great thing. Here's the good thing about the virus. We're not getting sick from contact from surfaces. I'm not saying you can't get it. I mean, if you put your hand in a freshly sneezed puddle from a 7-year-old, yeah, maybe you can get it. Okay, you put your hand in there, but for the most part, it's we all know it's coming in. It's inhaling those droplets because of a close conversation, or you're too close to somebody as they're sneezing or singing or whatever it is. So the contacts, even though we're going to be cleaning them, the surfaces, it's really, no, it's those droplets coming out of our mouths. That's and our noses. That is the key. That's why we got a distance, and that's why we got a mask. That's what the science says anyway, and we're always going to follow the science.
Okay, thank you.
Great questions. 2 more, Mrs. Land.
Next is Jennifer Sarkis.
Hi, Jen.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I have a question. My son's going to be in elementary kindergarten this year, and I guess one of my biggest concerns and worries, and not because of the educators at all, because everybody's very caring, but I'm wondering if there's a plan for what type of language is going to be used with the kids regarding these type of protocols and expectations. So like if a kid does want to take their mask off or is not following the directions the appropriate way, how it's going to be handled. Because I guess I just worry about, like, I don't want kids to be fearful or shamed. And again, not that that would be the teacher's goal by any means, but this is just a very different time.
Great question. Excellent question. And I'm going to send that question to our PBIS and mental wellness expert, Ms. Armstrong.
Thanks, Tom. Really, we want to look at, and you're not familiar with this, but if you don't have older students, CARE is our motto: cooperation, accountability, respect, and excellence. And all of our teams in the buildings are working right now to create that grid, which many of you who've had kids for a long time have seen, that puts those expectations, and it's really in a pro-social, positive language. And so if a child takes their mask off, we're going to remind them that, in Webster, we show care by wearing our masks so that we're protecting others, and that kind of language.
Great. And Jen, we also, we're going to have 6 days of professional development in teacher time before school starts on September 10th. So we are basically front loading many of our superintendent's conference days. We're using up our snow days, and we're going to, and those are some of the conversations that our teachers will be having around, okay, we got to use positive language, care language to help our kids feel comfortable, especially our kindergartners. So, but great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last one, Miss Land.
Last question is from Wendy McVeigh.
Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Carm. First, I just want to say thank you to you and all of our administrators and teachers. And I just want you to know that your work is so appreciated, and we're praying for your health and your safety and your sanity.
Thank you.
Is about internet bandwidth. I work from home, and I have to live stream for my place where I work. And when the neighborhood all logs on to Netflix, we have really big issues. What's going to happen on Wednesday when all of the kids are logging on about the same time to do online school? Has the school thought about that? Do you have a backup plan? We don't have a lot of internet options here in Webster.
No. All right, so Wendy, I'm going to actually give this to the experts, Mr. Zimmer and Mr. Montemero.
Hey, Wendy, how you doing? So this is Brian Zimmer. So one of the things that we've been looking at is moving away from Zoom to Google Meet for that factor alone. Google Meet does not require a lot of bandwidth pull. It's a very, very simplified program. Our Chromebooks right now are only 4 gig. So Zoom previously was running 4 gig. So it ate up a lot of intensity of the program. We had over 1,000 issues just between March and April with just the Zoom program. What I'm hoping is that we're gonna see increased abilities now with this. The Google program does not take much. We're also working on a Wi-Fi program as well. So if it becomes an issue, we can figure out a plan to support you as well. But right now we know that things will get a little bit better. I had 3 people running Google Meet at home all from March on when this happened, and seemed to go okay. So I'm expecting that we'll be in a little bit better position starting, even if we're running YouTube, we're running all of the high potent programs, but Google Meet is a lot different than Zoom. It requires almost 3/4 the amount less bandwidth than Zoom does. So.
Great. Thanks, Brian. All right, so we're going to end there. And don't worry if you haven't gotten your question answered. We're going to send you a feedback form momentarily. You can fill it out, send it to us. Feel free to reach out to me via email, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours, whether it's me or whether it's somebody who really knows what they're doing, one of the experts that you've already heard from, and we'll make sure that we try to get you an answer as best we can. So again, I really appreciate the fact that you guys spent 75 minutes on a Sunday night in August with us. We know that no one chose to go through a pandemic, and this is not the way that we want to open school, but it is what we have. So we will continue to make lemonade out of the 5-ton lemons that seem to keep coming our way. But that's okay. This is our bridge year. It's a year that's going to look a little bit different, but we can get through this. But your support and your patience and your flexibility are incredibly appreciated. And again, don't worry about if your questions weren't answered. With those of you with your hands raised, you'll be able to ask them, and we'll try to get you some answers. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night.